Welcome to another episode of Thriving by Nature podcast with Bethany Stone. I'm going to try something new today. I feel like I'm getting more technologically advanced every day, so that's pretty cool. But what I would like to do today is I have been thinking about what I would like to share as a podcast, and I think I need to share about perspective. I feel like we have a lot of different perspectives that happen in our lives. And the way we look at things can really change the outcome and how we feel. So, what I would like to do is I've co authored 4 books. I'm in the process of writing my own book, which I'm very excited about. But during this time, I thought I would share about a chapter that I wrote in the Change Book Series 23. And this chapter was about perspective. So this podcast is going to be a little bit different because I'm going to read you my chapter of that book. And we're just going to share it because sometimes people like to follow along. And I know that I like to follow along when I read. So this is my chapter, and it's on page 83. This is my bio. And then here it is. It says, it's called The Lesson of the Lollipop. The way we view our experiences is truly fascinating. 2 people, or even a lot of people, can go through the same events and emerge with completely different perspectives. These are my experiences and how my changing viewpoint transformed my life. Childhood experiences shape our outlook, and since we first inherit the perspectives around us, my childhood was no different. I grew up in a town with a population of 1,000. A small farming community in Idaho. We worked hard, and our success was at the mercy of the weather's natural consequences on the crops. And my mother was the daughter of a Swiss native, and my father was a newcomer to America who had just arrived from Switzerland. As a result, my home was rich in Swiss culture, encompassing both its positives and negatives. My siblings and I learned the values of strong work ethic, dedication, perseverance, determination, and plain old grit. We were a musical family. We would wear traditional Swiss costumes as children and sing while my mom played the piano. We didn't have much money, but we did have each other and the drive to better the situation we were in. I was 3 when my parents learned I was an independent soul, not one to be pinned down. And one day, while at home, my mom showed me a lollipop she would give me if I behaved. I don't remember why, but being my mischievous self, I didn't get the lollipop, and I felt wronged at such a deep level that I decided I would go get one from the store myself. I rushed to my room, I gathered my silver coins, and found my little red tricycle, and I rode to the gas station. We lived off of a busy highway. I knew enough to ride on the side of the road, and I remember being scared as the semi-trucks whizzed by. And I recall my young mind's determination to reach that gas station. When I arrived at the store, I parked my tricycle. I had made it. And I knew exactly where the lollipops were inside. And after I had selected my lollipop, a man waiting in the checkout behind me recognized me, small town benefits, and asked me how I got there. I told him I rode my tricycle. He then put my tricycle in the back of his truck and drove me home. I didn't really care much at the time because with my lollipop in hand, I claimed victory. Needless to say, on my return, my mom was shocked, worried, and mad. I didn't get to keep that lollipop. As an adult, I relate to my mother's feelings. If my child rode off alone, I would have felt the same feelings of worry and would have enacted the same consequence. But for my childhood self, this small event shaped my lifelong view of the world and myself. I lived that experience. It was empowering. I felt victorious. I felt like I had solved the biggest problem ever. Today, when my mom and I talk about it, you can still hear the frustration in her voice that I would have done that. And I agree. But my 3-year-old perspective, this strengthened my belief in myself and what I am capable of. And though I am grown, I still feel a sense of pride and admiration in myself when I think of this event in my life. No moment is wasted, even when they seem like mistakes. This perspective, which I developed in childhood, laid the foundation for further shifts in my outlook and helped shape my future. Another perspective story I've reflected on over the years was when my house burned down. I was 16. We lost not only our treasured possessions inside the house, but the entire structure also turned into ash as it burned to the ground, only leaving our roof in the wreckage. The memory of my house burning holds many emotions and feelings for me. I wasn't there when my house caught fire. I was attending a national ballroom dance competition. My two older siblings were also away, one at college and the other on a church mission. As I competed, the people I knew wore two sad looks and I feel bad for you gazes. Something felt wrong. They knew, but waited to share the news until after the finals. After my partner and I placed second, my uncle walked across the dance floor, gave me a hug, and told me there had been a fire at my house and that my home had burned down. I returned to my hometown the next day. My family was staying at my Swiss grandmother's home in town. My whole family was in a state of shock. I heard my siblings and my parents' rendition of where they were and what they experienced. My home burned down during a terrible snowstorm. The ruthless temperatures and wind shut down roads and highways. Snow blocked our town's volunteer fire department miles from their trucks. An electrical fire had started within the walls as our home was over 100 years old and not everything was updated. My brother awoke to smoke filling his room, and he woke everyone up. All my family members, except our poor dog, escaped the burning home. At our grandmother's home, my family's physical belongings were gone. They didn't have toothbrushes, underwear, or clothing. I had more than any of my family members because I had a bag of dance clothing and things I had packed for my ballroom competition. And the nearest town was far away with only a Walmart. Considering this, our small town pulled together and every religious denomination donated to my family's immediate needs. My friends ransacked their dressers and gifted me their best school clothes. The tragedy of losing my home became a humbling time in my life. I gained perspective that the most treasured possessions I have are my family and friends, not the things I lost in the fire. This realization was the first mindset shift I experienced in this tragedy. The second perspective shift happened within a couple weeks of my house burning. I was supposed to compete in a scholarship program, but my dress, the one my mother sewed for weeks, for poise and appearance category, had burned up. And I also had nothing to wear for my dance and vocal talent. Despite this, my friends urged me to compete anyways. The next morning, outside of my grandmother's door, an envelope sat on the porch with my name on it. Inside, I found $400 and a note that read, "Go get a dress." Fairy godmothers do exist. And with the money, my mom and I bought the most beautiful dress, hot pink with heavy beading on the bodice and a layered tulle skirt. I truly was Cinderella, just in pink, not blue. And after throwing together a talent and gathering the rest of my wardrobe for the competition from family and friends, the day of the scholarship program came. In the afternoon, judges conducted the interview portion of the competition. I did mock interviews to practice for this and knew the judges expected confident, clear answers to their questions. I was called to go in first. I wasn't nervous. I don't get nervous very often. A little superpower I'd gained from my Lollipop experience. The girls around me smiled, saying, "Good luck," or "You got this." I was feeling good. Once in the room, I introduced myself and sat down at the long table. I was ready. 4 judges sat in chairs across the table from me. A nice-looking lady asked, in what I heard in an overly sweet, pleasing voice, "What does your room look like right now?" Ice-cold dread replaced my confidence. What a shock to my soul. My mind flashed to the image of my roof lying on the rubble of our home. My room was ash. I had thought I was handling losing my home well, but the strength I had built up inside came crashing down. I couldn't respond. Instead, I started to cry. I will never forget the shock on the judges' faces. I wasn't politely crying either. I was full-on ugly crying, with noises, sniffling, uncontrollable tears, and an inability to utter coherent words. I vaulted to my feet, knowing I wasn't going to pull myself together, and fled the room. This wasn't a fairy tale. I left no glass slipper behind. It wouldn't matter what dress I wore now. I had ruined my chances in the competition, and I let everyone down. Pure fear terrorized the other girls' faces as I left that room. One by one, they approached the door to their judge's interview without knowing the context of my tears. And later, when the competitors were backstage, the other girls shared with me that their tears shook their confidence before their interviews. We were in the same situation, competing for scholarship money and going through this interview process together. I like using this example when teaching about perspective because there are multiple perspectives to consider. My friends didn't cry in their interviews, though the judges asked the same question to more than one girl. But my reaction to that question differed because of what I had recently lived through. I thought I was okay, but my perspective shifted. My experience made it impossible to function when others could. I wasn't okay. I was traumatized. And despite my confidence and preparation, I couldn't control my tears. My trauma changed the outcome of a successful interview, costing me potential scholarship money. If you ask me today, what does your room look like right now? I wouldn't react as I did when I was 16 and traumatized. I'd respond in a comparable way to my friends that day, but at 16, because of my circumstances, my perspective differed. From this story, I learned our emotional well being and awareness of those emotions tie directly to our environmental and our immediate situations. These two forces, environment and situation, often play a crucial role in how we behave, how we feel, and how we treat others. And because of this, I argue that happiness is supposed to ebb and flow. The trauma of my house burning brought about heartache. I was not okay. And the question the judge posed increased my awareness of that heartache. I knew I was not okay. In order to understand the positive emotions we crave, we need to go through difficult situations that bring about hard emotions and poke at our awareness of those emotions. Then we know where we are at, and without denial, we have a place to start. One final emotional awareness change I underwent came from choices of others, which often can be more dangerous and more damaging than fire. I ended a troubled marriage of 10 years. We had 3 little boys. My ex-husband was a good man, but had too many personal demons to conquer, and as a result of his behavior, his behavior was damaging to my boys and I. I left that marriage diagnosed with battered wife syndrome, and because I was in such a state of disarray, a truly abusive person preyed upon my weakness. He sought me out, told me lies, and when I questioned anything, he claimed I couldn't see things his way because of my ex. The cloud of low self-esteem and fear pushed me into denial of what was really happening to that lollipop-driven girl I once was. I was losing myself. This man convinced me to marry him, knowing I was in a fragile state, and within months of meeting him. I now have discovered my first husband had demons in his life because of substances that stole his will. In contrast, my second husband was intentionally abusive rather than unintentionally reacting and lashing out because of addiction. He put me through pain purposefully. He controlled me and gaslit me, constantly blaming his lack of success in his job, his children's outbursts, his health issues, all of it on me, my past, or my children. We were the cause of everything wrong in his life. He forced me to quit my job, he controlled our money, and he demanded to go with me everywhere I went. His psychological abuse drove me to thoughts of suicide for the first time in my life, and I planned it. But even in this, miraculously, my perspective saved me. When I was at my lowest, too sad to get out of bed, and thinking about the pills I could take to make the pain go away, I looked out my window, and right there on a branch was a hummingbird couple making their little nest. Hummingbird nests are usually difficult to see. Birds build flexible nests with spider silks, cotton, mosses, and other soft materials they find, intricately shaping them with their bodies. And as I lie in bed watching this little miracle happen, hope started to grow within me. A little bit of that victorious, lollipop-loving child shone through. And, like I did at 16, I realized what I felt. I felt lost. But if I was only lost, I could be found again. And from then on, I became like those birds and began building myself back up. I started to write. I had stopped because my husband mocked me for writing and used my embarrassment against me. But that couldn't matter now. Through writing, I connected with my feelings and attached me to me again. In words on a page, I saw where I was losing myself, and I started to pick up those pieces. I started to cook again. I started to run, dance, and exercise. I started calling my family and friends again. However, starting to find myself also started causing some ripples in my abusive marriage, especially when I began to stand up for myself. Pushing back against my newfound hope, he became more abusive. So much so, his abuse escalated into physically assaulting me while I was putting makeup on. Afterwards, he told me that he acted out in self-defense because I had a blush brush in my hand. He called the police officers to remove me from the house. He worked in law and would manipulate it for his benefit. And when the police officers came, he told them he felt threatened by me. I never threatened him. I never touched him, and I was the one covered in bruises. One police officer took me aside and told me I was being physically and emotionally abused. Because I built myself into more of myself again, denial couldn't reach me as easily, and when I heard the police officer's word, I knew they were true. He advised me to get out now, asked me if I had family nearby, and informed me he was going to cite my husband and prevent him from entering the house for 8 hours. He gave me a card for the victims' advocates in town and urged me to contact them. I called my parents, a couple of siblings, and the people I value more than those things turned to ash or any item that we packed. And they had me and my boys moved out in less than 3 hours. Since this happened, I've never spoken with my ex-husband again. We saw each other at mediation to sign the divorce papers, but because of my journey back to myself and standing up for myself, he knows that I will not be controlled and I will not be pinned down. We all experience moments when we wish to transform and change our emotional or physical state. And while this isn't a simple thing to do, it's essential. And once you see what you want to change, when perspective shifts are there, start from where you're at. Begin with hope. From this experience, I learned that our perspectives and our desire for change are connected, each strengthening the other. As you add small changes, your perspective will fuel further transformation and further desire to change, causing a snowball effect. Start with the small changes in your situation and your environment. As I learned from my second perspective shift when my house burned down, our environment directly ties to your feelings. By altering your environment, you alter how you feel. Change up or establish routines, friendships, diet, what you listen to, watch, and read. By continually moving forward, even if you're not perfect at doing so, you gradually build up the emotional and physical self you want, piece by piece. My life now resembles what I thought could only happen in fairy tales. I have an amazing husband who supports and encourages me and loves my boys. When we met, my traumatized perspective was that every man was inherently evil. I had the history to prove that thought pattern. He was very persistent and worked hard on having me agree to that first date. Once again, my perspective shifted. All these stories I have shared contained my truth. I have learned on a deep level that when you open yourself up to happiness, knowing that life won't be roses and sunshine, you open yourself up to love, forgiveness, peace, and the life you could only dream of. Is my life perfect? Far from it. But I do feel content with where I am and possess an infinite sense of gratitude for the experiences that have shaped me and taught me how to be who I am today. I still have that hummingbird nest to this day. I took it from the tree after the little ones had left. It reminds me that I want to ensure my perspective supports that same drive I had when I was 3 years old riding my tricycle. My perspective of knowing what I want, whatever that lollipop is, and working until I feel the satisfaction of victory in my grasp. My story may help you. Allow perspective shifts to change the way you look at things. Find hope in even the tiniest glimmers, because what you tell yourself today can change your perspective tomorrow. And that is my chapter. And I hope you enjoyed this reading of my chapter for my podcast today. And I want you to remember that it does start with your perspective and how you look at things. Be positive. Remember that what you think really will change your tomorrow. And this is another episode of Thriving by Nature with Bethany Stone. If you are interested in this book, you can buy on Amazon, or you can reach out to me and I can actually get you a copy. If you go to my website, thrivingbynature.com, I actually have the book as a download. So you can just have the book for free if you'd like. And there's so many great chapters in this book. Also on my website is a free downloadable journal, as well as an opportunity to book a free strategy call with me so I can help you to support you in self-care and gaining perspective and taking care of yourself where you're at to create a better you list. So thank you for listening to another episode of Thriving by Nature, and I will catch you next time. Welcome.